With talks going on tonight in Washington, I sat down with Donald Trump at Trump Tower a little while ago. Not surprisingly, he was pretty blunt about the dysfunction that shuts down the government. He's in the chair tonight. Donald Trump, if you were the CEO of Washington Incorporated right now, how many times would you have been saying you're fired in the last few weeks?
Well, probably a lot, but they really have to learn to get along. I mean, you just have a president that is not leading and not getting people into a room and not shouting and cajoling and laughing and having a good time and having a terrible time. But, you know, all of these different emotions and things you have to do. But you have to get people in a room and you have to just make deals for the good of the country.
He's finally done that today with the Republicans. So a group of them have gone down. They're led by John Boehner. Many people are criticizing both Speaker Boehner and the president for not doing enough talking in the previous few weeks. Just in the Clinton-Gingrich era, they talked all the time.
Well, I will say this. If the Republicans stuck together, they have cards like you wouldn't believe. You know, I hear so much about the Republicans don't have the cards. The fact is they have tremendous cards if they stuck together. But Piers, they're not sticking together. You have all of these different guys making different statements, and they want to come back, and we should be back. The fact is they have a lot of strength if they want, but they're not sticking together.
The government shutdown is painful, but a debt ceiling crisis would be potentially catastrophic. Warren Buffett's called it the nuclear button option, and that it should never be used as a political tool. As a top businessman, what do you think of that?
Well, nobody knows. It's uncharted territory. You know, the debt ceiling, look, we're up to 17 trillion in debt. Nobody's ever
Can you even believe that figure?
No. It was a word.
This now gets trotted out as if it's perfectly normal.
Well, it was a word that didn't exist in our language 10 years ago. Let's face it, trillion, the word trillion. Now you don't hear billion anymore. All you hear is trillion. The fact is that it's a number that's staggering, 17 trillion, and going up rapidly. It's not stopping there. They're looking at 24 trillion. Now, at what point does it stop? The debt ceiling, nobody knows what's going to happen. Now, you could have a situation where you don't raise the debt ceiling and people actually have to go and really cut and get the country back into shape. There are those that say that could happen also.
Would you feel comfortable about the debt ceiling limit not being extended? As somebody who has so many fingers and so many business pies in America.
The word comfortable is a hard word. Certainly I wouldn't feel comfortable with it because, again, you're uncharted territory. But I will say this, something has to be done to get debt down. We can't continue to go this way. We're looking at numbers that are just staggering, and they're going up at a staggering rate. So something's going to have to be done. They have to make deals. They have to sit down and say, we're going to have to do something. You look at what's happening with other countries, how they're Look, hey, I've been doing this with you for a long time, and it never changes. Nobody changes. Nobody does anything. When you look at China, when you look at some of the other countries, the way they take advantage of this country, China gets their oil, and they come through the straits. Now, they come through the straits. We protect the straits. China gets most of the oil, and Europe, by the way. We get 10%. China gets most of the oil, and Europe, by the way. We get 10% of the oil, and yet we spend all of the money of the mill. Why aren't people reimbursing us for this? Why aren't people helping us? Why aren't people doing things? We cannot continue to spend the way we're spending. And really, to a large extent, it's to the benefit of others. And in particular, I mean, China's the worst abuser. There's no question about it. But virtually every country that does business with us as a country takes advantage of the United States.
From a business point of view, though, China's been extremely smart with America. It's bought up more and more American debt.
It's very smart.
Nearly a third of American debt is owned by the Chinese. If there was to be a default on the debt ceiling, the first people that would get paid would be the Chinese with their bonds, because otherwise the whole pack of cards comes down. I mean, their power, if there is a default on the American debt, increases pretty rapidly.
Well, I guess you could say that. But look, China's already been lecturing us, don't let this happen. Can you believe this? We put ourselves in a position.
Can you laugh at them saying that?
Well, I can't laugh.
In a wry way?
I think you could cry. I'm not sure about the word laugh. I mean, it's sad how we put ourselves in this position.
But laugh at the effrontery, because actually they have a position of strength, don't they?
They have played us. Nobody's ever played us like that, other than OPEC. I would say OPEC maybe even has played us better. But I use them as the two chief abusers, China and OPEC. Nobody's played us like those two. But China, when you think of it, what they've done is, in the history of the world, there has never been any country that has manipulated their currency to their benefit, like China has. They manipulate their currency. They take our jobs through this manipulation. What they do once our companies go there is incredible because they put rules and regulations on those countries. I mean, when Caterpillar makes tractors, they don't want them made in the United States. They want them made in China. They also want all of the information, all of that incredible technology. They want all, and they ask for things that we don't even think of asking. And by the way, they tax our products when we send them.
How did you feel when you heard that the death payments to the widows and families of dead servicemen and women in the American military were not going to be paid?
Well, I thought it was one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard.
Dead servicemen and women in the American military were not going to be paid.
Well, I thought it was one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard, and I've been doing this for quite a while. I've seen a lot of crazy things, stupid things, horrible things, and I guess you put this in the category of all of the above. I actually tweeted that if the government doesn't pay it, I will. And I assume in some form they're going to get paid because I haven't heard back. But a lot of people respected what I said. I think it's horrible. Here you've lost a son or a daughter that you love and cherish. And then on top of it, the government says, well, we don't have the money to pay for the funerals and for the death. I mean, it's incredible. So when you say, how do you feel about it? I thought it was outrageous.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk about the art of the deal. You've written a book called The Art of the Deal. You know Speaker Boehner well. You know the president, obviously. I want to work out from you how these guys can get together and do better business.
Okay. I think one of the biggest problems they have, they don't like each other. When you don't like each other, it's very hard to make a deal.
Donald Trump, when you look at John Boehner and Barack Obama as businessmen, putting aside your clear leaning towards the Republicans, but just a straightforward businessman, there seems to be a real problem there, the way both of them conduct business. John Boehner hasn't got control of his party. The president won't negotiate in a way that people think he should do. Regardless of how this current shutdown all washes up, what advice do you give him about the art of doing a deal, of doing business?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems they have, they don't like each other. When you don't like each other, it's very hard to make a deal. And you understand that. It's common sense. But they don't like each other. There's tremendous animosity. And I see it. I mean, when I watch them, I know John Boehner, and I like him. He's actually a good man. He's working very, very hard. And he's got probably the second most difficult job. I mean, he has got some tough job. But
what would you do about the Tea Party? Ted Cruz and those guys, 40 people in his party, effectively holding the entire country to ransom.
But you see, I'm a believer in the Tea Party because what they want is what's really right for this country. They want something to be done about this horrendous debt, something to be done about a lot of different things going on in the country. I mean, our country is in a free fall, and these are good American people. These are great American people. So, you know, sometimes severe, sometimes not so severe, but sometimes severe, sometimes not so severe, but what they do want, what's good for the country. Now, the speaker has to be able, and the president, to get along together. When they played golf, everybody called me, oh, they're playing golf. What do you think? They thought I was going to say negative about them playing golf. I thought that was the greatest thing. They could get along. Problem is they only played one round. They got to play a lot. They got to get along. They've got to be led, and we're not being led. Now, in all fairness to the president, he's never been a deal maker. He never made deals before he became a senator.
Is that a problem, do you think, for him?
I think it is, because I don't think he's a natural deal maker. You know, it's like sports. You have natural hitters in baseball and natural shot makers in basketball and natural putters in golf. He's not a natural deal maker. It doesn't come naturally to him. So he's got to use other people. He's got to do something, because right now, you know, again, when he said, I'm not negotiating, that's fine, but then you have to negotiate.
Right.
In other words, say it. You can say it to the world, but then you got to negotiate. When he says it, he doesn't negotiate.
Bill Clinton told an interesting thing, which was when he was dealing with Vladimir Putin or with Newt Gingrich, it didn't really matter, any opponent. The technique he used was he'd kick everybody out of the room eventually and just go man to man.
That's great.
Look them in the eye. He said, Pania, boom, boom, boom. But they get stuff done. And I said to him, did you trust Putin, for example? He said, well, he never went back on his word to me about anything, which I thought was really fascinating.
Good statement.
And he said that in the end, you don't actually really need to believe everything you're being told. You just have to do a deal. Do you go along with that?
Well, I do. Look, President Clinton did have a lot of good relationships, and that was why he was able to make deals. And he really did make a lot of deals, and a lot of deals for the good of the country. The fact is, right now, we have these stalemates. I've never seen anything like it. There's constantly a stalemate. So what's going to happen in 2 weeks is going to be more interesting. Now, maybe as we're speaking, they're going to make a deal where they do some kind of an extension. But an extension is not what you need. You need the overall deal. We have to they're going to make a deal where they do some kind of an extension. But an extension is not what you need. You need the overall deal. We have to make a big deal, and it has to be the proper deal for the country. Looking at America Incorporated as a business, clearly some massive problems. What is the way forward? Because America built really through the last century on this great manufacturing tour de force, which rampaged around the world as this great superpower. Clearly, it's no longer that kind of country. That's right. What do you do about it? Well, again, it's jobs. You have to take jobs away from other countries, China, India, all of these countries, they're taking our jobs. By the way, Mexico, we've made it so good for Mexico. What they're doing to us is unbelievable. You've got to take back jobs. You've got to make the economy strong. And you know what? When you make the economy strong, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of the things that are in trouble, they won't be in trouble anymore. We have this incredible machine, but we're not using it. But if you can create a great economy, we don't have to worry about Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all things that are good things. We don't have to worry about them again. Do you worry that America may not have a great economy again in your lifetime? Well, if we don't have the right leadership, we will never have a great economy again. And we frankly will not be a great country again. We need the right leadership. Right now, our leader, I think he's well-meaning. I hear all sorts of things that, he really doesn't want. It's ridiculous. He wants to do a good job. I really believe he wants to do a good job. But his mindset is not on what we need. We need a great and strong economy, and that will take care of all that money pouring in is a positive thing, not a negative thing. It's a positive, and that will take care of so many problems that we have. Do you believe in the green shoots theory at the moment, that property is beginning to bounce back and car sales are good and so on? I think it's very, very fragile. One of the things that we have is we have an artificially low interest rates. Now, I'm a developer. I love low interest rates. I love it. I'm doing the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm doing Doral. I'm getting this money for like nothing. I'm getting this money for like nothing. But that's artificial. It's not going to be that way. Don't forget, the biggest thing is when the government borrows money and pays interest, it's paying so low right now. When they have to pay a normal rate of interest, you want to see deficits? That's going to be the biggest deficit of all. So we have to get the economy going before the interest rates start going up. How do you feel when I heard the Statue of Liberty was being closed down because of the shutdown? I don't think many Americans realize how that looked to the outside world. This absolute symbol of America and liberty and freedom, closed for business. How do you feel as an American? There's been 17 shutdowns since the early 70s. It's nothing new, and some have been Democrat, some have been Republican, in fact, more Democrat. But as an American, do you not feel embarrassed when this kind of thing happens? Well, when the Statue of Liberty, Piers, was closed and they announced and everything, I thought it was very bad. When the soldiers weren't able to get the money, the families of the soldiers, to be buried, that to me hit me much harder. The Statue of Liberty, it'll open. But a case where you lost your son or daughter and you can't get money from the United States, you can't get burial, they call it burial money, that to me hit me much harder. I thought that was just horrendous. I thought that was the worst. That was one of the worst things I've ever heard about this country. And we'll be right back. Finally, Miley Cyrus. Back now with Donald Trump on the 68th floor of Trump Tower, one of the most imposing buildings in New York. Back now with Donald Trump on the 68th floor of Trump Tower, one of the most imposing buildings in New York, as befits my imposing guest this evening. So, Donald, I'd like you just to give an immediate reaction to all the following names. Okay. With your apprentice boss hat on. If they were in the boardroom, what you would say. Okay. John Boehner. He's really working hard, tough situation, but I think he's doing a good job. He's trying to keep it all together. He needs more support. Hired or fired? Oh, I'd hire, absolutely. Barack Obama? Again, I happen to think he's trying very hard. I don't think he's a natural at putting together coalitions and deals, in this case deals, but I do believe he's trying very hard. I think he does want what's good for the country. Hired or fired? Probably, I would say, let's not use hired or fired. I hope he turns out to be a great president. I've been saying this for a long time, but I do believe he's trying very hard. Harry Reid? I know them. I, again, think they're all working very, they have different views. They have different points of view, different from mine in these two cases. But Harry Reid is a pretty tough guy. He's a pretty strong guy, and he's a very, very worthy opponent.
Did you hire him?
Well, I'd hire him. I don't know if I'd hire him for the country, but I'd hire him. I'd like to have him on my side.
Obamacare?
Obamacare's a disaster. Obamacare, I would fire. Obamacare is a very, very big detriment to the country. Companies are closing because of it. They will be closing, and many have.
Ted Cruz?
Well, I'd hire him. I mean, he's a smart guy, and I really think that based on everything I've seen, he is bringing a certain awareness to a situation. I would certainly hire him. And all of these, the president, these are all smart people, and they do mean well, but they have very different points of view.
Finally, Miley Cyrus.
Well, she stays at my hotel, so she always has good, always she stays at my hotel. In fact, she's at my hotel right now. I called her the other day just to make sure.
Taught you how to twerk?
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it like her. Probably don't. Look, you're talking about her. You're asking her between the president and Boehner. You're asking about Miley. So she's doing something right. I think she's getting great attention. I happen to like her.
Donald Trump, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Piers.